What's going on, Los Angeles, Bruin Nation, LAFB fam? How we doing? Your dynamic duo, the Thriller and Madman, back together again for all of your UCLA basketball needs. And we've got an interesting episode for you here, an interesting conversation. I don't know if it's a great conversation. I don't know if it's a bad conversation. I certainly think it'll be a riveting conversation, but it will be interessante, needless to say. And before we do, Thriller, how we doing? How you enjoying this Sunday evening? Always so great to see you, my brother.
So great to see you, man. It was a tough game on the hardwood for our UCLA Bruins, but not a tough life outside of that. We're getting a ton of rain in LA recently, huh, man? I feel like we were living in Seattle these past 2 weeks. It's been unbelievable, but outside of that, man, everything's been good. Keeping up with our transfer portal on the football field and, hoping our UCLA Bruins basketball team can turn this thing around here very, very soon. So
yeah, brother. It's when it rains, it pours, Thriller, and it's raining and pouring in Los Angeles, and it feels like it's raining and pouring on UCLA basketball. Again, this opening road trip really in terms of kind of core Big Ten play at Iowa, at Wisconsin. We thought it was going to be a test to see where this team was. Unfortunately, chapter one of the test has been a resounding fail, Thriller. The Bruins fall short to Iowa 74-61, a game in which the Bruins were down by as many as 22 points in that first half and were in danger of, getting completely blown out of the building. Come back in the second half, make a valiant effort to sort of cut it all the way to 4. But ultimately just not enough there. Bruins held to only 3 for 14 3-point shooting out of the 61 points. Lone bright spot, Donovan Dent really kind of came alive, particularly in that second half with 25 points. But outside of Donovan Dent, Thriller, the rest of the team had 36 points and really was nowhere to be found. Struggled mightily with shooting the ball. Sky Clark struggled a little bit, again, physically with some injury concerns. But it just seemed to be a total struggle to be able to finish around the basket, to be able to hit the 3-point shot. I just felt like, again, another, ball game where it was just a slog offensively. Yeah. And then when you sort of couple that with just the lack of resistance defensively, particularly in that first half, and you're going to be on the short end of a very bad stick, particularly on the road in the Big Ten here. And so UCLA, dare I say, Thriller, before handing it over to you, sitting now at 10-4, 2-1, in Big Ten play. Is this at Wisconsin game almost a must-win at this point? Are you in a situation here where if you fall to 10-5 and 2-2 in the Big Ten with the likes of Michigan State, with the likes of Michigan, who looks like an NBA team right now, with the likes of Purdue, when you start looking with the likes of Illinois, when you look at, the crosstown rivalry game twice, when you start looking at this schedule, if you don't win this Wisconsin game, are you potentially out of the NCAA tournament in terms of consideration here, given where this schedule lines up? So a lot to unpack here, Thriller, but your thoughts from this game against Iowa.
Yeah, this was a very eye-opening loss to me because you have 10 days off coming into this game, given the holiday season. And, this was kind of the game we have circled. Iowa's ranked the 25th team in the country coming into this game, and we've struggled with the ranked opponents. We need to kind of have those signature wins if we're going to have a chance to get into March Madness, given everything that's transpired here in the early parts of the season. And you just came out as flat as possible. It's almost like if Bilodeau is not going to score 18-plus points, we're not going to have a chance. And, he had his roughest output thus far throughout the season. Really struggled with some of the defensive fronts that Iowa was throwing at him. Bennett Sturtz, he was outstanding on the other side, draining long three-pointers, making plays. That and one in the first half, just kind of like skied it with his left hand off glass. It just felt like that kind of got Iowa into a different mode where they dominated. And I know we came out in the second half and played hard. We even cut it to a 4-point game. But to back yourself into that corner, especially when we talked about how does UCLA need to win these games? They need to do it through long-distance shooting. We were 3 of 14 from long distance in this ball game. And, I'm a little worried. Sky Clark pulled his hamstring in that game. He had to be sidelined for a little bit. That's a guy that I think is probably our second best scoring option through about 15, 16 games of basketball. You mentioned it, Donovan Dent looked really good in the second half, but those early turnovers were tough. And, I think we got to just point and look ourselves in the mirror right now, because every press conference I hear from Mick Cronin, it's talking about his players and how they're doing things wrong. Take some accountability, man. You are the coach for UCLA basketball. We just signed you to a 5-year extension. We need you to see, I need to do better. I'm tired of hearing this deflections towards the players. These are the guys you brought in and, sold the vision to of UCLA basketball. Your job is to elevate that to another level. And, comparing the cohesiveness, the teamwork of both these teams. I mean, Iowa was a complete team. What did UCLA look like out there? It was not even a team. And I'm a little worried about our guy, Eric Daly, who's been just kind of silent for 5 games now, 4 points in this game. We know about his defensive efforts, and it feels like he has to take on more of a role given everything that's going on with the defensive lapses that this team has. But it's a lot to be concerned about, man. I don't think this is something you can shrug at, given this extension happened out of nowhere and this team is struggling and we haven't been able to recruit in state like we've wanted to. I mean, madman, like I got my panic meter pretty high. I think you asked me after the Arizona loss, what was my panic meter? I gave it a 2 at that time. This is about an 8 or a 9. I don't think we're going to be making the tournament or even coming close if things continue this way.
No, Thriller, I mean, really well said. A lot to unpack there. I'll start with kind of, what you talked about in terms of in-game performance there. Dent goes 12 for 19, Thriller. To your point, he missed some shots early, had some early turnovers, but then really was that driving offensive factor to sort of get us back in the game. Outside of Donovan Dent, this team went 13 for 37 from the field. I mean, and so you're talking about 34% from the field outside of Donovan Dent. Bilodeau goes 3 for 10. You talked about the Sky Clark injury. You talked about Eric Daly really not finding any sort of offensive flow over the last 5 games. It's a thin bench. I really love this 7-8 man rotation, but it just seems like this team is so disconnected and they're disheartened. And I think it's sort of a couple of things here. I think, this is one of those teams that isn't naturally a great defensive team. And we've talked about it a ton. They don't have that length on the perimeter. They don't necessarily have that fortification on the interior over a 40-minute game. So there's going to be some deficiencies there on the defensive side of the ball. You have to sort of be able to offset that with an ability to score more. In a year where you don't have an A-grade defensive roster, what do you have to do? You have to sort of manage to your roster and say, look, if we can get B-level defense, then we really need to get A-level offense. And it just seems like this team is as clueless as ever offensively as any other Cronin team. And then when you couple that with not having the innate defensive abilities that previous Cronin teams had, this is what you ultimately get. And I think, Thriller, zooming out, look, Iowa's a good team. They're at home. I wouldn't characterize Iowa as a great team. There's a lot better teams here that UCLA is going to play in the Big Ten. That's the scary part to me. Michigan, Michigan State, Illinois, Purdue. I mean, I would say all of those teams are better than Iowa. And then you're going to go into some hostile environments like at Wisconsin in just a day. I mean, when you couple all of that up, I think it's going to be a very long shot for this team as presently constructed with the mentality that they have, with the culture that Cronin has instilled in this group, to be able to make the NCAA tournament. And that would ultimately be 2 of the last 3 years, Thriller, that UCLA doesn't make the NCAA tournament. And I'm with you. I'm getting sick and tired of Cronin constantly bashing his players. It's getting old. It's getting tired. I've said it now for a while, better part of 2025. We're going to have to see how this goes over the course of this season, give him an opportunity to turn this thing around, and maybe one more season. But look, in April of 2027, that buyout number goes down to about 12 to 13 million. It's a manageable number. Don't get me started on how he got the extension in the first place and the timing of it. But I think there's an inflection point there in April of 2027 where if this thing doesn't turn around, you're going to have to absolutely make a change, because you have to be able – this is his style, to me, Thriller, just doesn't work at a place like UCLA. At a place like UCLA, you need higher-end talent. you need more 4 and 5 star kids, and you need more of a free flowing offense, and you need to have kind of timely defense and toughness when you need it, really good rebounding, but you have to be more of an offensive oriented team on a West Coast at a place like UCLA. I know we always, it's our bitter rival like Arizona, but look at the type of athlete that Arizona is getting. You can't tell me that the NIL dollars for Arizona are probably a little bit more than UCLA right now, just given the emphasis is so much on basketball relative to football. But in terms of access, in terms of pedigree, UCLA should be getting the athlete that Arizona is getting, every bit the athlete, even some of the athletes that SC's been getting over the last 15 or 18 months. The fact that we're striking out on that level of athlete thriller, and now we're trying to just sort of turn, grind out, these 3 and 4 star kids and trying to put a round ball in a square peg, it's getting old. It doesn't work anymore. And I think we're sort of at that point. I'm with you. The panic meter for me is 9, not just in terms of the game, but just the state of the program. This does not look like a program that is in a position to contend seriously for conference and national championships for the foreseeable future.
Think about it, man. Like for 40, 50 years, UCLA, if you're a talented player in Southern California coming through the high school ranks, it was kind of like a known fact. You were either going to UCLA or you're going to heavily consider them in the process. Trent Perry kind of fell into our laps because he didn't really have a place to go to. You know what I mean? And, Booker's technically an All-American, but it's more of a project as he's transferred in from Michigan State. So these All-American caliber players are not the kind you would typically expect at UCLA. And these grimy, 3-4 star kids that you're talking about, good ball players, no doubt. But I just think Mick, for his style of coaching, it's not a cultural fit at UCLA. And I think it was just a catastrophic mistake to re-up this guy as it stands right now. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I will welcome that as someone that covers this program like you do and want to see the best for UCLA. But I mean, we talked last time about it. My claim was he is the James Franklin of college basketball right now. Where have I been proven wrong since that statement was made? Another big loss on the road. It's time to see some accountability. It's the press conferences that drive me crazy because it's like, you are part of the problem. Accountability is a big thing for me. Like you are in charge of these players and how they line up and everything. And, we're not getting the free throw line enough. They had 26 attempts compared to 12 for us. We're getting out rebounded. I know it's not the typical Cronin team, but given that extension, given how much we put out in NIL, the star power of a guy like Donovan Dent, we were expecting Elite 8 with this team at the very least. And it's so frustrating to see this team be on the verge of potentially missing the tournament, Madman. It's unfathomable at this point.
Unfathomable indeed, Thriller, because look, I think you and I take a lot of pride in knowing basketball. And, look, I'm not going to sit here and claim that, we're the Einsteins of basketball by any stretch of the imagination, but we understand basketball. We know basketball. We've watched it avidly for, the better part of 25 years. We've analyzed it for significant periods of time. For you and I to sort of have an expectation of a team be a top 10, top 12 caliber team, and for that team to not make the NCAA tournament, I just, there is something deeper going on because I still stand by, I love this 7-8 man rotation. The one deficiency that they've had is length on the wings from a defensive standpoint. And if you can get that interior rotation right, the ability to protect the rim are sort of the only 2 weak spots. But offensively, there are no weak spots. I mean, when you look at this team sort of from a personnel standpoint, and given just the level of talent and the expectation of how much Cronin emphasizes defense, you thought you'd be able to overcome some of those things with the right substitution patterns, with the right scheme, with the right management of the game from a flow perspective. For us to be as off in terms of our assessment to what this team is, I'm not saying that we're not capable of getting it wrong. You and I have both gotten it wrong many times over the history of this show. That's part of the nature of the business. but there is something deeper going on here. And you can
By the
see
way,
it.
man, preseason team number 12. So it's not
Team
like we
number
were
12.
totally out of line
So,
here.
you and I were sort of in line with everybody else in the media. How this team that's preseason 12 is where it is right now. They look totally disjointed. They look like they have no confidence. They look like they have no joy. They look like they're playing scared out there. They've also checked Cronin out. You can absolutely tell. And then when you sort of couple that with how demonstrative he is and how aggressive he is and how in your face he is with players. And I know he's rubbed a lot of alums the wrong way. I know that firsthand. I know he's rubbed a lot of donors the wrong way. I know that firsthand. This is not someone, I'm sorry to say, that I feel comfortable representing UCLA moving forward. I really don't. And I think, unfortunately, we're sort of in the situation we're in financially. But I think that April of 2027, I think the clock runs out on Mick Cronin unless we see a drastic change over these next, 15 months. Because you said it best, Thriller. I mean, you're the guy getting multi-million dollars. You're the guy who's put the roster together. You're the guy who's put the assistant coaches together. You're the guy who's built this program. I've never heard him say, I got to be better. It's always laying into his players. And that works sometimes for a 2-3 game period, when you challenge a guy and then he wants to respond. But that is not a style of leadership. That is not a motivational tactic that can sustain over a 15, 20, 25 game period. And we've seen that because he's challenged guys in the past, and UCLA will go on like a 3-game win streak or a 4-game win streak. And then ultimately it's the regression back to the mean to be able to finish off the season. So, Thriller, I got to be honest with you. We'll see how this thing plays out. I am not optimistic about where this season is headed right now. I would be surprised at this point if this team makes the NCAA tournament, which is shocking considering we have a $3 million point guard.
$3 million point guard, and it's the little things, man. It's just over and over again, this team just can't seem to get it right, and it's frustrating to watch. And he's not a bad coach. I think he could be a very good coach elsewhere. But when you talk about the Blue Bloods and what it means to be at UCLA, I just don't think it's a cultural fit. I'll be honest with you. Like him back at Cincinnati, that felt real. That felt like his identity was on display there and it meshed with the program itself. But when it comes to UCLA, I mean, we are known as this guy's going to be a lottery pick. That guy's got a chance to be a lottery pick. And we're going to have a shot in the tournament each and every year. I mean, I go back to the 06, 07, teams that we had here. And, Reggie Miller was at the feet. By the way, UCLA women's basketball whooping up on USC. Reggie Miller was sitting next to his sister Cheryl. And you just talk about, Chris Johnson comes on our show and, him and his family are like UCLA bleeds blue and gold. And, it's been a long time since we've really felt that way. 2021 kind of being an outlier, if you will, in that existence. It kind of feels like, I hate to say it, it feels like that Darnold Rose Bowl where it's like for a second USC felt like they were back for a little bit. We had the Lonzo Ball thing, but that was classic UCLA. Like that's the last time it really felt like this is the number one kid in California. And of course he's coming to UCLA because where else is he going to go? You know what I mean? And what really hurt me this year, man, was watching that Cal game that we lost. And Justin Pippen, a Scottie Pippen's son, was playing for Cal, and he's torching us. And I'm like, in any other coaching world, no chance Pippen is taking a trip up to Cal as opposing to play for UCLA. And it's just that's an indictment on the program right now, and I want to see us hopefully moving towards that in the future.
Yeah, Thriller, because UCLA being preeminent in basketball is where UCLA belongs. It's central to the brand. It's who UCLA is, and I think you brought up a great point. Look, is Cronin a bad coach? No, but there's a difference between, like we talked about, taking kind of an underdog program and turning them into a perennial tournament team, which by all accounts, in all fairness, UCLA might miss the tournament 2 of the last 3 years, but sort of historically in terms of Cronin's success, of course. And there's a difference between doing that and then taking kind of a perennial tournament team and then truly elevating them to year in, year out contender, where you're right there with the Dukes and the Kentuckys and now the Floridas and the UConns and so on and the Arizonas and so on and so forth. And I think those are two just different skill sets. And I think Cronin has proven to have the skill set for the former, and he has also proven not to have the skill set for the latter. And I think to your point, Thriller, it's one thing when you don't have inherent advantages geographically for recruiting to try and, sort of play, for the 3-star kid and mold them, because you have financial challenges or you have geographic challenges. I mean, this is UCLA in the heart of SoCal, where California and Southern California is one of the richest places for talent for high school prospects in the entire country. You don't have to sort of be in the bargain basement. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, hey, I want to go, sort of shop at the 99-cent store, even though you can sort of afford to shop on Rodeo Drive. Like, it's awesome to sort of shop at the 99-cent store, but you can sort of afford to shop at Rodeo Drive. So why don't you actually sort of do that? And then obviously, then the level of talent that's coming into the building is much higher. Now, you still got to develop. You still have to discipline. You still have to mold. You still have to strategize. You still have to do all those things. Your job doesn't just stop with recruiting. But, there's certain things that you can't teach. You can't teach wingspan. You can't teach vertical. You can't teach some raw athleticism. You have access to that, and you're not using it. I think that's really the catastrophe there,
How sick are you that Trevor Ariza's son, 5-star in the 2026 class, pride of UCLA, Trevor Ariza, like, not just like UCLA Bruin, Los Angeles Laker, great, like,
I'm nauseous about it, Thriller. I'm nauseous about it. I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach.
That never happens in any other era of UCLA basketball. Like,
I'll be honest with you. Yeah. Look, Taj, should be a Bruin. This may be a hot take and maybe a controversial take. I know it didn't work out. Bronny James should have been a UCLA Bruin. Okay, for everything that would have done. Think about it in terms of the NIL world that we're in, the transfer portal world in, the social media world that we're in. Elijah Arenas should have been a Bruin. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about the sons of all of these great players. That's how you build a brand. Look, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But the aftermath of it not working out shouldn't inform why that was a right or wrong decision. The bottom line is those preeminent blue chip kids who come from these notable basketball families, that's how you build a legacy. That's how you build a lineage. That's how you build a big brand. All of these kids should have been Bruins, and it kills me that none of them were. And so we have to sort of be able to get back to that. And look, I don't want this to sort of pile on top of Mick, but you brought up a great point. It's the cultural fit, Thriller. Mick would have been great in sort of the old school Big East. The Big East of the 80s and the 90s, the early 2000s. Remember those 80s and 90s Georgetown teams, those 80s and 90s Syracuse teams, those Providence teams, those Seton Hall teams, even those 80s and 90s UConn teams, that going up against Calhoun and all of those guys. Like, he's got that ethos, those 80s and 90s rugged Marquette teams. That's the ethos of Mick Cronin, kind of what kind of heritage Big East was. That's very different from West Coast basketball. And so I think, we wanted to sort of bring in someone to bring an added element of toughness, because that was what was missing from the Alford era. But I have to be honest, and hindsight, of course, is 2020, but I think we over-rotated. We over-rotated on the toughness side, and what we gave up was on the offensive imagination side. What we gave up was on the player development side. What we gave up was on the culture side of actually having joy in the program and for the game. And what we gave up significantly was on the recruiting side from a top-end talent. Anything else, Thriller, you want to close with?
Yeah, I'm offering Jay Wright a blank check right now to maybe come out to Westwood if he's interested. That would be sweet. He's out of a job right now. I know Mick's got some years, and this isn't like, we're not completely crapping on Mick, because I think he has done some good things at UCLA. It's been a while now. It's been since that 2023 season. This is 3 straight years of kind of mediocrity. I don't think he was warranted an extension. And if it keeps trending this way, it's just going to get worse and worse. So, yeah, for people that care about and cover the program, we have to, kind of say it how it is, because I think we'd be doing a disservice to you guys if we said it any other way.
No question about it. We're always real, if nothing else, for our Bruin Nation. And so before we get out of here, like we always do, we got to pay the bills. that number one sleeper app that you see below, number one sports app on the market today, real-time stats, real-time engagement, fully immersive one-stop shop. Really use it for all of your sports needs, whether it's various lines, over-unders, different types of spreads. Sleeper app has you covered for all of that great stuff. Use that promo code UCLA LAFB. Tell them the guys from the LAFB network sent you, and you're going to get $100 off your match bonus. Well, Thriller, another great one in the books. Man, oh man, I hope the next time, our next episode, where we're talking about basketball, you and I are in a better mood. But you know what? Yeah. Mick Cronin controls our mood. Okay, so Mick, you better get them ready to go against Wisconsin. Otherwise, more is going to be coming here because we just expect more, because this is UCLA. We bleed it. We love it. And we know what the pinnacle of this sport is, because we've been at the pinnacle of the sport and we've paved the road for the pinnacle of the sport. And we have every intention of getting back there. So like we always say, Bruins, in wins, in losses, be loud, be proud, be passionate, Bruins. And until we see you next time, 4 is up forever, baby.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.